Later on in the program, I will explain why this man, Bibi Netanyahu, is slowly becoming this man, George W. Bush. Don't make the same mistakes we made after 9/11, Israel. Don't let George W. Bush be in charge of your military. This is the mop-up for October 23rd, 2023. I'm David Feldman. Please like this show. Please subscribe to my channel. Please share it with your friends. That's the best way to help. The Colorado lawsuit to strike Donald Trump's name from next year's Republican primary ballot is continuing to gain steam. Similar cases around the country are popping up as more and more lawsuits are filed claiming Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment, automatically disqualifies Donald Trump from ever holding elective office again. Colorado District Judge Sarah Wallace on Friday rejected Trump's argument that it's up to the Republican Party and not the Constitution to determine whose name qualifies for the Republican Party's primary ballots. Well, as if Trump doesn't have enough on his plate, the petitioners suing to remove Trump from the Colorado Republican primary ballots say they plan to depose the former president when this goes to trial. It is up to each state's individual Secretary of State to, there you go. It is up to each state's individual Secretary of State to conduct elections and prepare the ballots for each party. Colorado Secretary of State Jena Griswold is a newly elected Democrat, and she has intimated a willingness to remove Trump's name once she receives judicial guidance, which has to be adjudicated by the middle of January of next year when her state's 2024 ballots are finalized. Sidney Powell is one of the indicted co-conspirators in that RICO trial down in Georgia, where she, along with 18 other co-defendants, including Donald Trump, has been charged with election interference in the 2020 presidential election. If you recall, last Thursday, she pled guilty and will now be a cooperating witness against Donald Trump. This is not good for Trump. He's going to be having a very bad week. His life is getting a lot worse. You do not want your lawyers flipping. Sidney Powell, according to the indictment and the January 6th report, was almost appointed special counsel by Trump during the waning days of his presidency so she could prosecute Democrats for voter fraud. Trump is reportedly freaking out, which is why he took to social media over the weekend to insist Sidney Powell was never my attorney, and by force of habit, he said, I don't know the woman, she's not my type. I think he said that. But she was his attorney, proudly so. This is a tweet from right after he lost the 2020 presidential election. I look forward to Mayor Giuliani spearheading the legal effort to defend our right to free and fair elections. Rudy Giuliani, Joseph DeGenova, Victoria Townsend, Sidney Powell, and Jenna Ellis, a truly great team added to our wonderful lawyers and representatives. So that's not good for Donald Trump. His life is just getting worse and worse. Who flips next? Probably another lawyer. Kenneth Chesebro, the author of the memos that served as the template for the false elector scheme, he pled guilty on Friday and, like Sidney Powell, agreed to testify against Donald Trump. The lawyers are the ones most likely to flip first. It's their nature. Jenna Ellis is a lawyer who is also indicted for conspiring with Rudy Giuliani to overturn the election in Georgia. She's one of the 19 co-conspirators. She's already been disciplined by the Colorado State Bar, and she wants this all to disappear. She's openly expressed contempt for Donald Trump and his failure to pay her legal bills, despite his Save America PAC raising hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars after the 2020 election to look into voter fraud. But he didn't pay any of these lawyers out of that money. And she feels the least he could do is purchase her silence by paying her legal fees. I do love it when lawyers can't afford the legal fees. So she's angry, disappointed, and many say she's going to cut her losses and probably plead guilty later this week. It's what I've heard. Monday begins week 4 of Donald Trump's civil trial in New York, where he has already been found guilty on one major count of defrauding banks and insurers by inflating the value of his properties in order to secure loans and insurance policies. This trial, as you know, cuts to the heart of Trump's identity, his manhood. He defines himself wrongly as a rich and powerfully smart businessman. He's not. One of the arguments Trump is making is the Attorney General, Letitia James, is presenting absolutely no evidence that anybody was harmed by his falsifying the books. And he claims that he paid back all these loans, and that still remains to be seen, whether or not he paid back all those loans. But in terms of you can't prosecute me or you can't sue me in a civil court because nobody was harmed, according to New York state law, it doesn't matter if any harm was committed. The law says it's criminal to falsify your business records. And Letitia James, the state attorney general, will be able to prove, she already has, that there was harm done. It was done to the state of New York and the federal government since, according to this lawsuit, Trump deflated the value of his properties when it came time to paying his taxes. He says Mar-a-Lago is worth $2.5 billion. Then why did he sign a paper with the tax assessor in Palm Beach saying it's worth $19 million? That's fraud. You're ripping off the government. You say it's worth $2.5 billion? Then pay taxes on it, Donald. Trump's chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, had to retire earlier this year from the Trump Organization after he was found guilty of tax fraud and was sent to Rikers Island for 3 months, and he's testifying in this civil trial. His former attorney, Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, also went to prison. He's out and turning state's evidence. He now despises Donald Trump. And his bombshell testimony, which was scheduled for last week, is now a go for Tuesday. But late Sunday night, there was word that the courtroom would be closed on Monday due to an undisclosed COVID issue. So we don't know if they'll be open for Tuesday. Trump is supposed to be in the room Tuesday, stink-eyeing Michael Cohen, snorting and threatening. That's what he's been doing. And his snorting, this is true, his snorting got so bad last week, the judge in the case had to instruct Trump to stop making noises. He was snorting, he was sighing, he was grunting. This is mafia crap, intimidation. Former Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy on Sunday said he's still refusing to endorse Donald Trump or any Republican candidate for president. Let's see, he endorsed Scalise for Speaker. Scalise didn't even take it to the floor for a vote after that endorsement. Then he endorsed Jim Jordan, even made the nominating speech for Jordan before the third round, and Jordan lost. Hey, why don't you do us all a favor, Kevin, and endorse Donald Trump for president? Please endorse Donald Trump. The race for Speaker continues this week, and I don't think we ever get one. I really don't. The continuing resolution expires on November 17th. Without a speaker, they can't pass a budget before then or even extend the continuing resolution, which means there would be a government shutdown and no speaker going into the Christmas holidays, which is the perfect present for the Freedom Caucus and the right-wing billionaires who hate Washington, D.C. This is exactly what they want. No speaker, no government, no regulation. Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who was part of the Republican House leadership until she agreed to sit on the January 6th committee, went after Kevin McCarthy on Sunday and accused him of rising to power as Speaker this year by empowering House Republicans who are white supremacists, anti-Semites, and insurrectionists. You mean all of them? How else do you become Speaker with a Republican majority? You can't become Speaker unless you form a coalition with white supremacists, anti-Semites, and insurrectionists. That is the Republican caucus. Cheney then called Donald Trump the single most dangerous threat America faces. Well, yeah, I guess if you're Liz Cheney and you don't give a rat's ass about half this country not able to come up with $500 for a medical emergency, if you don't care about the eviction crisis, student debt, free tuition at all public universities, expanding food stamps and welfare, then yeah, Donald Trump is the most dangerous threat to America. Look, she did a great job during the January 6 hearings. She did. But she voted for Donald Trump twice and didn't vote to impeach him the first time. I'm glad she came around on Trump, but not exactly the prescient visionary we should be listening to. Liz Cheney added she's not ruling out running against Trump if nobody in the current field can stop him. Well, you kind of ran against him in 2022 and you got primaried out of office. So, Liz, maybe your party, the party you grew up in, is a lost cause. Liz Cheney, what if you weren't just wrong about Trump? What if you were wrong about other things as well, like your father and his war in Iraq and how he ordered inmates at Gitmo to be tortured, or the way he tried to pay for massive tax cuts for the wealthiest by cutting spending for the poorest? I mean, if you were wrong about Trump, Liz Cheney, is it possible you were wrong on everything? Cheney also said the death threats against Republicans who didn't vote for Jim Jordan were driven by Trump, that Trump ordered those death threats. Jim Jordan was unable to comment since his dominatrix, Madame Lafart, kept the ball gag in his mouth all weekend, and he forgot the safe word. On Sunday, Kevin McCarthy refused to say whether he's running for Speaker again. Well, Kevin, I think it goes without saying. I think the Republican conference made it clear. They hate you. He keeps blaming Matt Gaetz and the Crazy Eight. If it weren't for Matt Gaetz and the Crazy Eight. Really, Kevin, you can't get 4 of the Crazy Eight to come to your side? It's not the Crazy Eight. It's the entire caucus. They've moved past you. It's at least half the caucus. You do just as poorly right now as Scalise and Jordan did. And Kevin McCarthy has made it official. He said he is officially endorsing House Whip Tom Emmer for Speaker. And Emmer said, gee, great, thanks. So I guess I'm going to remain House Whip. Thanks, Kevin. Sunday was the deadline for anyone delusional enough to think Republicans actually want to elect a Speaker. So that was the deadline to officially declare that they intend to lose the race for House Speaker. So this evening, there'll be a candidates forum. And as of Monday morning, we now know 9 House Republicans have declared they are candidates for Speaker. And why not? These are the same people who believe lowering taxes on the rich will also lower the budget deficit. So why shouldn't they believe they can also be Speaker? They meet tonight, they make their case, and then tomorrow, I believe at 10 a.m., whoever gets the nomination tonight will lose the speakership tomorrow. Byron Donalds is the Republican congressman from the state of Florida, the crappy state of Florida, and he declared he's a candidate for Speaker. And I think Donalds has a chance because he's black. When it comes to the Republicans, never underestimate the power of window dressing. Donalds has only been in Congress since 2021, and he's a member of the Freedom Caucus, but he worked with Kevin McCarthy to get the continuing resolution passed. So I think he's got a really good chance of getting everyone's hopes up and then having them thwarted. I think everybody's going to get their hopes up. We finally have a speaker. And then, no. But for a minute or two, we thought he'd be the one. We're not going to get a speaker. The Republicans are pretending they want a speaker, but the plan is a government shutdown, a permanent government shutdown. They hate Washington, D.C. Kevin Hern from the crappy state of Oklahoma declared that he's a candidate for speaker before turning to politics. He owned 18 McDonald's franchises, and now he wants to be speaker. Brother, you think the ice cream machines at McDonald's never work? Just wait. But 18 McDonald's franchises is nothing to sneeze at, because if you sneeze at it, you'll end up giving the cockroaches and the Big Macs COVID. He ran for office because he wanted to give Americans heart disease in the public sector. He was done giving Americans heart disease in the private sector. He thought he would try it in the public sector. By the way, before running for office, he sold all his McDonald's franchises after he found out Mayor McCheese got elected as a Democratic Socialist of America. Oh, and he owns a hog farm. Not the kind of pork your constituents are looking for. He's only been in Congress since 2018, so he has what it takes. He's got that perfect combination of inexperience and overconfidence. You might remember he ran for Majority Leader 2 weeks ago when Majority Leader Steve Scalise was the official nominee for Speaker for 3 seconds. He's got problems, though, this guy, Hern. Ken Buck will never vote for him because Hern is an election denier. Not only did he refuse to certify the election for Joe Biden after January 6, he signed an amicus brief in that case brought by the Texas Attorney General that went before the Supreme Court, insisting the 2020 election had been stolen, and the court wouldn't even listen to it. This guy, big-time election denier. So people aren't voting for election deniers. It's out of fashion. Well, in presidential politics, Ron DeSantis said if he's elected president, he's going to crack down on undocumented workers by taxing their remittances. Remittances are what they send, the undocumented workers send back to Mexico or Central America. Millions of agricultural workers come to America each year to pick our fruits and vegetables, and they send back remittances, money to their loved ones. And it's up there in the billions each year. So Ron DeSantis is going to thinks he's going to tax the remittances because that's how you stop the flow of migrants coming to the country. Layer upon layer of federal bureaucracy that will be impossible to enforce. They're undocumented. They're living in the shadows, and somehow you're going to find them and then audit them. I thought you wanted to fire all those IRS agents Joe Biden just hired. Here's an idea. Bring these human beings out of the shadows, and then they pay taxes. In fact, many of them are already paying into Social Security, but they're not entitled to it. In Iowa, DeSantis said he is all in on the Second Amendment and promised when elected he would repeal Donald Trump's executive order that restricts the purchase of bump stocks. Remember the shooting in Vegas on his watch? So they restricted the purchase of bump stocks. And he plans to reverse Joe Biden's executive order banning pistol braces. DeSantis says it's all part of his 5-point plan he calls Americans killing other Americans. Mitch McConnell yesterday morning told CBS News on Face the Nation that his freezing episodes are a thing of the past. And he sounded pretty convincing until he proceeded to repeat that statement 300 times and finally dozed off in his soup. I have no idea why he was eating soup while being interviewed on Face the Nation. McConnell said he fully backs President Biden's $106 billion aid package for Israel and Ukraine, unless, of course, Congress ever elects a speaker, and there's a chance it could actually pass. But as long as there's no speaker, he supports the $106 billion aid package. During the interview, McConnell said aid to Israel and Ukraine are connected. When asked how, he stared blankly into space and asked, because Netanyahu and Zelensky are both Jewish? And then he dozed off in his soup. Well, let's turn to Israel, shall we? Yes. On Sunday, Rudy Giuliani appeared on Newsmax and said, let's face it, Biden is on Iran's side and he's on Hamas's side. He's not on our side. We don't have a president now really functioning in the best interest of the United States. Plus, Biden's got a bunch of spies in his administration. This is Rudy Giuliani, who added, one after another coming out who those loyalties are to Iran and to the Palestinian Authority. Well, Rudy, you can't be on the side of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, two separate competing organizations. It's almost as if Rudy's deranged. He added, the spies are all around Biden, but he never really got to the bottom of Obama giving them hundreds of millions in cash. That's a crime. It was money laundering. That's a crime. It was money laundering. Hard to believe Rudy Giuliani just lost a defamation suit, had his law licenses suspended, and has no place to sleep this morning. Some more on Israel and Hamas. Last Friday, I told you that Dave Chappelle, during his Boston concert, accused Israel of war crimes in Gaza and said nobody should be fired in America for speaking out against Israel. While some walked out, the crowd began chanting Free Palestine, while others shouted, what about Hamas? It's like the UN General Assembly. Some Jewish audience members who walked out later told the Daily Mail, quote, the audience was cheering Chappelle. They were cheering him on during his tirade. I was sick. We were sick. I turned to my friends and wife and said, I think it is time to go. We walked out and met up with many other Jews leaving the show. Never in my life have I felt so unsafe and so fearful of what I was witnessing. Really? So you're Jewish and you went to a Dave Chappelle concert. Interesting. Incredible how fans of Chappelle insist complaining about his act is censorship, and it's just cancel culture nonsense when he trashes the transgender community. But when he goes after your community, then suddenly you no longer feel safe. Who do you think you were paying to see? Hannah Gadsby? By the way, Chappelle is right. About one thing, nobody should be fired for criticizing Israel or showing up at a rally in support of the Palestinians. Never again also includes never again to McCarthyism. And chilling protest only strengthens people's resolve. That being said, Dave Chappelle continues to say crappy things about the transgender community. And yes, he's right. Black people have it really rough in this country. But instead of comparing who's had it tougher, perhaps Dave Chappelle could extend to the transgender community what he's willing to extend to the people of Gaza, and that would be solidarity with all humans who are suffering. Well, I know Chappelle was upset by what happened to the Israelis on October 7th. I do know that. But if you're going to have solidarity with the suffering of others, don't other the others. Don't pick on the transgender community. It's cowardice, and it doesn't move the ball forward. And Jewish people, you knew what you were going to see, so you can't complain. You defended him. You said it's the nasty cancel culture when he went after the transgender people. It has to apply to everybody. Freedom of speech applies to everybody, not just when it doesn't suit your own interests. Meanwhile, the United States, Great Britain, Canada, France, Germany, and Italy on Sunday issued a joint declaration saying Israel has a right to defend itself, but said it must obey humanitarian law. Did I get this right? Yes. Israel's National Center of Forensic Medicine says hundreds of victims from the October 7th slaughter of Israelis have yet to be identified. The head of the medical division of Israel's Ministry of Health, Dr. Hagar Mitzrahi, said, quote, "I have never encountered such severe horrors as I have encountered since the incident on October 7th. The human soul is unable to cope with the atrocities committed." Yeah, it's hard to believe this stuff. It's why some people deny the Holocaust. They can't believe that humans are capable of doing what they do. Here's the latest. As of Saturday night, in Israel, 1,405 Israelis have been killed, including 307 Israeli soldiers and 57 police officers. In Gaza, at least 4,385 Palestinians have been killed, including at least 1,756 children, 967 women, and 11 journalists. In the West Bank, at least 84 have been killed, including at least 30 children and 1 woman. Let's look at the injured. At least 5,007 Israelis have been injured. 210, they believe, have been taken by Hamas. That includes civilians and soldiers. 100 Israelis are reported missing. In Gaza, 13,500 Palestinians have been injured, including 2,000 children and 1,400 women. More than 1,400 Palestinians are missing inside Gaza, including 720 women. In the West Bank, at least 1,400 Palestinians have been injured, and more than 1,040 have been arrested. President Biden has reportedly once again urged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to put off the planned ground attack into Gaza until the hostages are released. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, on Sunday told Israelis, "This is a battle for our lives, and it's, quote, do or die." To be expected from a leader whose calling card was security and then completely shit the bed, and unlike every other Israeli military leader and intelligence head, refuses to apologize. They all apologize, but not Benjamin Netanyahu, which is a sign of weakness. That's a sign of weakness, not apologizing. But he thinks it's a sign of weakness apologizing. Well, you know what a sign of weakness is? Ignoring intelligence reports. It's a little late to worry about signs of weakness, Bibi. I support Israel. I'm a Zionist. I support a two-state solution. My heart is torn apart by this, but I don't think I support Benjamin Netanyahu the same way I didn't support George W. Bush after 9/11. When 9/11 happened, George W. Bush and that entire administration should have been forced to resign. They were not prepared to lead America into war. George Bush couldn't keep our soldiers safe in Iraq and Afghanistan because he couldn't keep America safe on 9/11. And sadly, the same goes for Benjamin Netanyahu. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu is the right guy to be in charge of Israel Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu should be leading anybody into war and be trusted to keep the soldiers and the civilians on both sides safe. If Benjamin Netanyahu were a private security guard after what happened, he'd be fired and sued and maybe put in prison, not given the keys to the war machine. There has been great reporting in the Israeli press about how Benjamin Netanyahu propped up Hamas, used Hamas, made sure they were funded in Gaza as a way to undermine the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and thereby make a two-state solution impossible. Now, this isn't QAnon. This isn't some crazy conspiracy theory. This is the New York Times. This is Haaretz, which is like the New York Times of Israel. I'll talk about this later on, but if you read the New York Times or Haaretz, I'm talking mainstream press, Netanyahu, as recently as 2019, was saying that Israel needs to support Hamas because they will prevent a two-state solution. This isn't QAnon stuff. I'll talk about it in a second. It's very disturbing, very disturbing. And it's out there. It's in the mainstream press. The Israeli Defense Force says Hamas is holding 212 hostages. I don't know much. Seems to me you do whatever it takes to get them back. Not sure Netanyahu knows how to get them back. I think his pride has been damaged. He's not the person to be in charge right now. I think you got to get rid of Netanyahu. What do I know? But I think you get rid of Netanyahu. 17 humanitarian aid trucks finally entered Gaza on Saturday, 40 more on Sunday. That was reported, but we're not sure. President Biden has pledged $100 million in humanitarian aid to the Palestinians living in Gaza. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but he probably thinks that's a more efficient way of getting the hostages back. This is more efficient than shutting off their water. That's what President Biden believes. I guess I'm for humanitarian aid because my president is for it, and this pig is against it. This is the guy, he's against humanitarian aid, so I know whatever this guy wants, you should probably do the opposite. This pig's name is Itamar Ben-Gvir. He's Israel's ultra-extremist security minister. He says there should be no humanitarian aid until Hamas releases the hostages, says the man who can't even negotiate a hand job from a blind prostitute. This is who Netanyahu appointed security minister of Israel, Itamar Ben-Gvir. Now look, I stand with Israel. I'd like to stand on Itamar Ben-Gvir. If you're an American Jew, you should be appalled by Itamar Ben-Gvir. I know. Now is not the time, right? No. Now is the time to be talking about Itamar Ben-Gvir. Roger Cohen in Sunday's New York Times describes Gvir as a far-right pro-settler who has opposed the two-state solution since the Oslo Accords. 80% of American Jews support a two-state solution. It is the official policy of America to support a two-state solution. This guy, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is in charge of security in Israel, opposes American policy in Israel. He opposes a two-state solution. In fact, he has spent the past 20 years making a two-state solution impossible. He's a bigot and a supremacist. He is the antithesis of Jewish values. If you're an American Jew, I urge you to read up on Itamar Ben-Gvir. It is my humble opinion that he's a monstrosity. It is my opinion you don't want him speaking for Israel, Jews, and it is my opinion as an American citizen that he shouldn't be touching any of our tax dollars. According to Roger Cohen in the New York Times, this is in Sunday's New York Times, before the 1995 assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, who had just negotiated a framework for a two-state solution, Gvir ripped the hood ornament off Yitzhak Rabin's Cadillac and shouted, quote, "Just as we got his car, we'll get him too," unquote. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was killed later that year. Rabin's wife immediately blamed Benjamin Netanyahu's inflammatory rhetoric when he compared Yitzhak Rabin to a Nazi. Leah Rabin, Yitzhak Rabin's wife, blamed Benjamin Netanyahu for her husband's assassination. It's called stochastic terrorism. Donald Trump has been accused of stochastic terrorism. All it takes is one lone wolf to hear that call for arms. Some ultra-far-right Jewish extremists in Israel to this day commemorate the birthday of Yitzhak Rabin's assassin. Yitzhak Rabin was the architect of the two-state solution, the Oslo Accords, orchestrated by Bill Clinton. Rabin and Yasser Arafat, the chairman of the PLO, shook hands, and it was going to be a difficult, bloody pathway to a two-state solution, but better than what we have now. So I don't know if Itamar Ben-Gvir commemorates the birthday of Yitzhak Rabin's assassin. I do know that it's received wisdom. He keeps a portrait in his living room of Israeli-American terrorist Baruch Goldstein, who shot to death 29 Palestinian Muslim worshippers, wounding 125 others in Hebron. Itamar Ben-Gvir, security minister in Israel, leads a small party in the Israeli Knesset called Jewish Power. You see the American analog here? It would be like giving David Duke a cabinet-level post in America. If you are an American Jew who stands with Israel, as I do, you should find out who Itamar Ben-Gvir is. He now serves as Benjamin Netanyahu's Minister of National Security. Many say he's an anti-Arab bigot who has been dehumanizing the Palestinians and has helped destroy any possibility of a two-state solution. He, like Benjamin Netanyahu, is partly responsible for the nearly 500,000 Jewish settlers in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. America's official policy is opposing those settlements because our official policy is a two-state solution. So if there are settlers, 500,000 Jewish settlers on land that's been carved out for the Palestinians, they're making it impossible to have a two-state solution. There cannot be settlers in the West Bank or in East Jerusalem, according to American policy, according to the Oslo Accords of 93. That land was carved out as part of a Palestinian homeland. That's the American policy. The dramatic increase in Jewish settlers in East Jerusalem and the West Bank has increased exponentially during Benjamin Netanyahu's 16 years as prime minister. So, this guy is against humanitarian aid for Gaza. I don't want to be on his side, so I'm for humanitarian aid for Gaza. Magnus Corfixon is a spokesman for Oxfam. He told the BBC that only 34 trucks carrying humanitarian aid made it into Gaza over the weekend, and then added it's a drop in the ocean compared to what's needed in Gaza right now. In Germany, a nation that systematically slaughtered more than 6 million Jews during World War II, in Germany, nearly 20,000 stood before Berlin's Brandenburg Gate, holding pictures of the 200 hostages and waved the Israeli flag. Speakers denounced the rising tide of anti-Semitism in Europe, including in Germany. Germany's president apologized to the Jewish community, adding it's unthinkable that Jews in Germany should be terrorized once again. Synagogues are being defaced in Germany again. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said, quote, "Here in Germany, of all places, our never again must be unbreakable." Back in Israel, The Guardian reports that in Israel, Jewish journalist Israel Frey went into hiding after he said a prayer for the dead that included the victims of the October 7th massacre, as well as Palestinians living in Gaza, had to go into hiding. Benjamin Netanyahu's ultra-right-wing government, according to The Guardian, is cracking down on any displays of sympathy for Palestinians in Gaza. The Guardian reports that Israel's chief of police, Yaakov Shabtal, said, quote, "Anyone who wants to identify with Gaza is welcome. I will put them on buses right now that are headed there, and I will help them get there," unquote. You know, I have uncles who talk just like Yaakov Shabtai, and I don't let them anywhere near my children, let alone make them chief of police. 2 protesters from Standing Together, an organization that promotes brotherhood between Muslims and Jews, were arrested for displaying a poster that read, "Jews and Arabs, we will get through this together." They were arrested in Israel for displaying a poster that read, "Jews and Arabs, we will get through this together." The Guardian says that Netanyahu's government has purposely conflated protests against the bombardment of Gaza with being pro-Hamas. They're chilling speech in Israel right now. Well, this is not QAnon. This is the New York Times. Roger Cohen reported on Sunday in the New York Times what has been widely recognized for more than a decade, and that is Benjamin Netanyahu has been an outspoken supporter of Hamas. While his government is cracking down on people who are crying for the children of Gaza and conflating that with support for Hamas, it has been widely known that Benjamin Netanyahu was one of the biggest champions of Hamas, because Benjamin Netanyahu set out to divide and conquer the Palestinian people by creating tension between the ruling Palestinian party, Fatah, and the younger upstart, Hamas. Fatah is an offshoot of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Fatah was Yasser Arafat's party, and Fatah runs the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. It's the quasi-governmental agency. They police the agency. It's an outgrowth of the Oslo Accords. Hamas won the election in Gaza, and they control, I don't think you call it the Palestinian Authority in Gaza, but Hamas controls Gaza, and they have fought a civil war with Fatah, and Fatah has been portrayed as moderates who want to negotiate with Israel. And according to Roger Cohn in Sunday's New York Times, Benjamin Netanyahu told members of his party in 2019, quote, "Those who want to thwart the possibility of a Palestinian state should support the strengthening of Hamas and the transfer of money to Hamas. This is part of our strategy," unquote. And now he's leading his country into a war to eliminate Hamas. This is not QAnon. This is the New York Times, and this has been widely reported in the Israeli press. Cohen in the New York Times writes that Netanyahu's plan to strengthen Hamas because it's dedicated to the destruction of Israel. So in order to convince Israelis they lacked in the Palestinians a serious partner for peace, bring Hamas to the front. And the truth is, Israel did, in fact, have a partner in peace, Fatah. But it was Netanyahu's intention to weaken Fatah and make Hamas the face of Palestine, so Israelis would say, Hamas, we don't have a negotiating partner. No, you do have a negotiating partner. It's Fatah. It is my opinion that Benjamin Netanyahu, who has openly flouted a two-state solution for decades, should resign. A two-state solution has been America's official position since the Oslo Accords, since 1993. And now the two-state solution has become a pipe dream, mostly because of Benjamin Netanyahu. He needs to resign. That's my opinion. To me, Benjamin Netanyahu's early support of Hamas is eerily reminiscent of America's support for bin Laden when he was part of the Mujahideen. Did I even get that right? Mujahideen. Bin Laden was part of the Mujahideen trying to kick Russia out of Afghanistan. He was blowback. It's called blowback. Bin Laden was our ally when he was firing TOW missiles at the Soviets, but he then attacked us on 9/11. Like George W. Bush, Benjamin Netanyahu has been humiliated, and he can't think straight. He's angry. He wants revenge more than he wants peace. He's taking this personally. I fear that right now, for Benjamin Netanyahu, just like George W. Bush after 9/11, this is not about the security of Israel. This is about ego. In short, I believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is this guy, George W. Bush. Not good. Not good to have George W. Bush leading an army into war after 9/11. And I fear the Israelis, like President Biden said, are about to make the same mistake. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said his soldiers will destroy Hamas, but warns it could take months. Thomas Friedman in the New York Times wrote on Sunday, quote, "I believe that if Israel rushes headlong into Gaza now to destroy Hamas, and does so without expressing a clear commitment to seek a two-state solution with the Palestinian Authority and end Jewish settlements deep in the West Bank, it will be making a grave mistake that will be devastating for Israeli interests and American interests. Remember, the Palestinian Authority is Fatah. It's not Hamas. It was Netanyahu who pushed Hamas to the forefront because Hamas is obviously scarier than Fatah. It was Netanyahu was sending money to Hamas in Gaza. Thomas Friedman, writing in the New York Times, it could trigger a global conflagration and explode the entire pro-American alliance structure that the United States has built in the region since Henry Kissinger engineered the end of the Yom Kippur War in 1973. He goes on to write, I am talking about the Camp David Peace Treaty. Camp David Peace Treaty, that would be Jimmy Carter bringing peace between Israel and Egypt. The Oslo Peace Accords, that would be 1993. Yitzhak Rabin, Prime Minister of Israel, and Yasser Arafat went from being a terrorist to a political statesman. Netanyahu did not want that. He did not want a two-state solution. Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated 2 years later. Friedman goes on to talk about the Abraham Accords, which were orchestrated by the odious Jared Kushner, and the possible normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. He's saying the whole thing could go up in flames if Benjamin Netanyahu gets this wrong. He goes on to write, this is not about whether Israel has the right to retaliate against Hamas for the savage barbarism it inflicted on Israeli men, women, babies, and grandparents. It surely does. This is about doing it the right way, the way that does not play into the hands of Hamas, Iran, and Russia. He writes, if Israel goes into Gaza and takes months to kill or capture every Hamas leader and soldier, but does so while expanding Jewish settlements in the West Bank, thereby making any two-state solution there with the more moderate Palestinian Authority impossible, there will be no legitimate Palestinian or Arab League or European or UN or NATO coalition that will ever be prepared to go into Gaza and take it off Israel's hands, unquote. So he's saying it's a quagmire. It has the potential to be a quagmire. Israel got out of Gaza in 2005. It took about 7,000 settlers with them. Israel doesn't want to go back into Gaza and be an occupying force. You want to be able to turn it over to the Palestinian Authority and work towards a two-state solution, but that's not what Benjamin Netanyahu wants. So Thomas Friedman is saying Israel will end up being an occupying force, has the potential to become an occupying force forever. And it reminded me of Bob Woodward's 2004 book called Plan of Attack, where then Secretary of State Colin Powell warned Bush against invading Iraq. Colin Powell, in the summer of 2002, we went into Iraq in, March of 2003, and Colin Powell was the Secretary of State, and he was saying, don't do this, don't do this, okay? Woodward writes in Plan of Attack that Colin Powell said to Bush, quote, about Iraq, you're going to be the proud owner of 25 million people. You will own all their hopes, aspirations, and problems. You'll own it all. Privately, Woodward goes on to write, Colin Powell and Deputy Secretary of State Richard Armitage called this the Pottery Barn rule. You break it, you own it. Which reminds me of Thomas Friedman again, because Thomas Friedman supported the invasion of Iraq back then. And he claims to be the one who coined the term the Pottery Barn rule. Well, he's wrong about coining the term, and he was wrong about Iraq. But to Friedman's credit, he has learned from history and is warning Israel not to go in, because this will end up a quagmire with no way out. Nobody's going to take Gaza off Israel's hands. Saudi Arabia, the UN, you break it, you own it. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes killed 30 in Gaza's Jabalia refugee camp. Palestinian authorities say there were mostly women and children. 27 were also injured. Israel warned Palestinians in northern Gaza to head south, saying this is between Israel and Hamas, not you. One Israeli soldier was killed and 3 wounded when a small band of Israeli forces entered Gaza in search of the hostages. Hamas reportedly fired anti-tank missiles. 2 Palestinians were killed after Israel bombed a mosque inside a West Bank refugee camp. Israel's military arrested 52 Palestinians in the West Bank, some of whom were identified as laborers, workers who had come to the West Bank from the Gaza Strip. 14 neighborhoods along the northern Israeli border with Lebanon were evacuated as fighting continued between Israel and Hezbollah. Hezbollah is an Iranian-backed militia stationed in Lebanon, and they've become a very successful political party in Lebanon. 6 Hezbollah fighters were killed, 19 total since war broke out between Israel and Hamas. So you've got Gaza in the south. You've got the Hamas from Gaza firing rockets and invading and slaughtering people. And to the north, you have Lebanon, where Hezbollah, an Iranian-backed, terrorist organization, but they're a political party now in Lebanon. They're testing Israel to the north. Syria. Did I tell you that 6 Hezbollah fighters were killed? 19, yes, 19 since war broke out. Yes. Syria reports 2 workers were killed when an Israeli airstrike hit that country's airport in Damascus. This has the potential to spill into Lebanon and Syria and Iran. 1 Israeli soldier was killed and 3 wounded when a small band of Israeli forces, I already told you that. Where am I? Oh, Canada, France, and the United States have confirmed independently that the airstrike that killed hundreds inside that Gaza hospital last week was the result of a Hamas rocket gone astray, not an Israeli airstrike. 100,000 people took to the streets in London over the weekend to protest Israel's attacks on Gaza. And the FBI is now looking into Saturday's stabbing death of Samantha Wall, the president of a synagogue in Detroit, Michigan. Joe Biden won Michigan, but Michigan has some of the largest Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian communities in America, and Michigan State Representative Alibis Farhat said Biden's failure to help Gaza and combat Islamophobia here in America is resulting in the Democratic Party bleeding Arab and Muslim voters. Maybe I hear things I want to hear, but I thought he addressed anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in his national speech. I don't know if that's quite fair, but maybe I hear what I want to hear. Pope Francis and President Biden spoke for 20 minutes on Sunday about Gaza. You should listen to the Pope on this. I am Jewish. I stand with the people of Israel. What happened on October 7th was an atrocity that can never happen again. And I stand with the people of Israel. If there isn't a Jewish state, it's only a matter of time until Jews are exterminated. I see the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, in the United States, and in countries where nobody even met a Jew. They hate Jews without even taking the time to meet one. It's the story of my religion. So there must be a Jewish state, and there must be in Israel a safe harbor for Jews. And I think Joe Biden has been pitch perfect in counseling temperance. I support Israel and I support the Israeli people. And the 200 hostages must be returned because I stand with Israel. I do not, however, stand with their leader, Benjamin Netanyahu. He is a gangster, a thug, a bigot who, like George W. Bush, besotted by his own tough guy swagger, was too arrogant to read the intelligence reports and allowed Hamas to break through his nation's defenses and commit mass slaughter on a scale not seen since the Holocaust. And now, like George W. Bush, Bibi Netanyahu is responsible for the worst attack on his nation's soil in the entire history of Israel. That's now Bibi Netanyahu's. It's on his record. He killed the two-state solution to keep everybody safe. He openly supported Hamas to drive a wedge inside the Palestinian people, to create a counterweight to the moderates in the Fatah Party who did welcome a two-state solution, or at least were willing to work towards a two-state solution. It's kind of the same way America supported bin Laden when he was killing the Soviets. Benjamin Netanyahu openly supported Hamas because he said their refusal to compromise will convince Israelis there's nobody to bargain peace with. There is somebody to bargain peace with. Abu Mazen, the chairman of Fatah. Benjamin Netanyahu has been against the two-state solution since the Oslo Accords. His political rhetoric served as the stochastic terrorism that contributed to the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, the architect of the two-state solution. I believe Israel has the wrong prime minister right now. Because of Netanyahu, he's been Israel's prime minister for 16 years. There are now 500,000 Jewish settlers in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, land, according to the Oslo Accords, that belongs to the Palestinians. I am a Zionist. I believe there must be a Jewish state. I support the Israeli people and I support Israel. But I also remember 9/11. I remember George Bush leading us into the wrong war for the wrong reasons. And I see it happening all over again in Israel. My country, America, supports a two-state solution. That is our official policy. Benjamin Netanyahu does not support a two-state solution. He has undermined America's official foreign policy every step of the way. I support Israel. I am a Jew. I am an American, and my country's official policy is a two-state solution. I don't understand why we continue to support Benjamin Netanyahu when for 16 years he has succeeded in undermining our official policy, a two-state solution. I believe Benjamin Netanyahu is an existential threat to the nation of Israel and possibly the entire Middle East. He has to go. He is Israel's George W. Bush, and he's got to go. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you.